Journey Home, Chapter 22. Samuel had drawn the short straw and had trudged off through the underbrush to find the feeder springs. Peter and Jade were collecting water and sediment at the main current, a calm, mossy stretch, glinting green. Jade climbed out and handed Peter a jar. She leaned against a trunk beside the camp table and looked over the water. This must be the most perfect 100 yards of river ever. Labeling the jar, Peter smiled. Samuel says you say the same thing at every bend. He says, "That girl sure loves running water." Jade nodded. "I do love rivers, but I really love this one." "Oh, I know it isn't much in size as rivers go, only a dozen feet wide in some places. Even enough not to be downgraded to a stream, but not by much, right? What it lacks in size, though, it makes up for in determination." "Determination? What do you mean?" "It's always moving, never lets anything stop it up, as if it knows blocked water goes stagnant." Peter put down the jar, looking at the river with new interest. He liked listening to Jade. "And this river is special. See, this one is mine." "Yours?" "My grandfather lived on this river, about 60 miles down. Well, they still do. It's a tiny little town that didn't see any battles, and everybody had wells, so nobody left. I spent every summer with them when I was a kid. I had a rowboat, and I knew every bend, every beaver dam, every swan's nest. That made it mine." Jade took a fresh jar and splashed it back in. For an hour they settled in an easy rhythm. The river murmured quietly in the late afternoon sun. It sounded patient, in no hurry. Peter felt he was drifting with its peaceful current, until Jade startled him with a tap on his elbow. Peter looked down at the sample case in his hand. "Did I pack this one wrong?" Jade shook her head and rolled her eyes to a pine bough above them. "See that guy?" she whispered. "The chickadee? I think he's getting ready to pay us a visit." Peter located the bird, at least a dozen feet up, studying them intently. "Well, he's not afraid because he's got wings," he confirmed, "but I don't think he'll get any closer. No, really, he's been hanging around since we unpacked. He's curious. If we give him half a chance, he'll come right over. Watch." Jade eased a granola bar out of her pocket, held it up as if to show the bird, then peeled down the wrapper with small moves. She lowered herself cross-legged to the ground and patted a space next to her. Peter put down his marker and eased himself into a comfortable position beside her to watch. Jade surprised him. "You do it," she whispered. She broke off a few bits of granola bar and placed them in Peter's hand, then pocketed the rest. She lifted his arm, palm up. "See? Friends," she called to the bird. "We can keep talking," she said to Peter, "but soft and easy, okay? And no sudden moves." They sat like that for a moment, 3 creatures watching each other. Then Jade turned her head slightly to Peter. "Sometimes, don't you get the feeling they're trying to make a connection with us? As if they're saying, 'Hey, you get hungry, I get hungry, we have so much in common.'" Peter nodded. "When I had my fox..." He looked out over the river, giving himself a moment for the lump to swell up in his throat and choke off the words. The lump didn't gather. "When I had my fox, people used to tell me the same story all the time. I was walking in the woods and I noticed a fox off to the side, as if it just happened to be walking in the same direction, that's all. The people always described the way the fox was looking at them as, well, companionable, equals. Then the person kept walking and forgot about it, until a while later the person looked over and there was the fox again. And again, everyone said the same thing. It was as if the fox was saying, 'Hey, I'm on a walk, you're on a walk, we're walking together. Cool.'" The bird hopped down a few branches, craning its head out to better inspect the offering in Peter's hand. "I've had that happen too," Jade said. "Squirrels, crows. Once a fawn followed me until its mother put an end to that, which you can't blame her, since we eat them." Peter watched the chickadee drift down to the lowest limb. It gave a peck to its shoulder feathers, then cocked its head to study him with a big black eye. Peter lowered his voice even more. They all said that they felt chosen by that, as if the fox had made a decision that they were worth trusting. The chickadee sidewalked to the very end of the bough, swaying on a slim spray of pine needles. Peter and Jade stopped talking. They looked at each other, as if to give their visitor privacy. Out of the corner of his eye, Peter saw the bird make its move. He felt it land on the tip of his longest finger, felt the tiny claws tighten to perch. Jade froze, except to hike her eyebrows at Peter in delight. Peter hiked his back at her, and felt a silent laugh warm his whole body. Jade slowly turned her face to beam a smile at the bird as it ate. That smile, Peter thought, would cut across any species line. The chickadee ruffled its chest feathers and flew off, and Peter laughed out loud. It struck him. This was Jade's kindness again, her secret weapon. She had given him a moment with wild creature, and now he was a boy who laughed. Jade pulled out the rest of the granola bar, broke it in half, and held out a piece to Peter. Communion! With a bird! Can you believe how lucky we are? Peter took a bite and ate it thoughtfully. Fulla called me lucky when she heard that I raised a fox. She saw not many people get to have that kind of a bond with a wild animal. She called it two but not two bond. Connected. It's a Buddhist idea. Jade nodded. Non-dualism. I know that concept. So, will you get another pet when you go back? Go back? Home, to this Vola's, when your service is finished. Maybe it was the chickadee. Maybe it was the river murmuring sleepily. Something lulled Peter into letting down his guard. I'm not going back, he said. My old home is just past that mill. I'm going there. Jade sat back. But who's there? Nobody now, but when the water warriors are finished, people will come back. No, Jade folded her hands on her lap as if she were trying to calm something. You're 13. You can't live alone. Peter grew wary. Oh, no, sure. I'm not going back right away. First, I'm going to spread my dad's ashes and see about the house, That's all. I'll be there a couple of weeks, Jade's eyed him for a moment longer than he liked, but she let it go. Well, maybe that's the place you'll get a pet. As soon as you open up the house, you won't be alone, that's for sure. What do you mean? Where people had to relocate, animals were abandoned. They'd come all around when they're since you're back. Except not as his house, Peter knew. PAX had marked his yard for 5 years. No cats or dogs ever ventured in. No, that won't happen. I don't want another pet. Jade looked at him sharply again. She opened her mouth, but just then Samuel returned. Storm tomorrow, he said. We should head out early. Peter jumped up and held him off with his gear. For the next hour, he kept busy recording data, gathering wood, building the fire. He helped pack up the equipment, then volunteered for cook duty. He set a tin of beans on the fire and pretended to be engrossed in stirring them. At last, he passed out plates and they ate, then cleaned up. All through it, Peter felt Jade watching him.